I'm grateful to each and every one of you for being out here tonight. Obviously recognize this is family time and free time, so appreciate you very much being here. I did want to mention we have quite a few core staff here you've probably been chatting with already, but please make the most of those folks here. The presentation will be short, and the focus of tonight's meeting is really to sit with you, to sit at the map table, to talk about your concerns, your solutions, your suggestions, and kind of get those ideas flowing. So please grab those folks, and if y'all haven't, if you want to just maybe introduce yourself really quickly with your name and your discipline so people can target you after the presentation. Stacy, you mind starting?
I'm Sheree Price. I work in planning at the New Orleans District. I'm Pamela Fisher. I work at the New Orleans District in real estate.
Scott?
I'm Scott Wandell. I'm from project management, Corps of Engineers. I'm Brad Inman. I'm the branch chief with project and restoration at the Corps.
Matthew Bowling, planning formulation at the Corps of Engineers, New Orleans District.
Everard?
I'm Everard Baker. I'm a biologist for the planning office.
And we've got our public affairs staff here as well to support the meeting, which we really appreciate. I did want to mention quickly we'll be in Hahnville tomorrow, so if you have, I'm sorry, Wingmark.
Oh,
Sorry.
executive office?
Good catch. Thanks, Brad. So we will be in Hahnville tomorrow night, so if you have friends, family, colleagues who couldn't make tonight's meeting, please help us get the word out and let them know that we'll be meeting tomorrow night to go over the same presentation and have these similar discussions on the alternatives that we're looking at tonight. So a quick word about the effort. You all know this area is flooded historically and continues to flood. We recognize that a lot of really good work has been done in the basin. Corps did a study several years ago. The state has the alternative in the state master plan. The locals are out there constructing and doing a lot of really good work in the basin. So we'll be pulling from that wealth of information to help us make good decisions as we move forward in the study. And so this meeting is really to let you know where we are, but it's also to be an information and data gathering meeting, so you all can kind of share what you know, what we need to know, and again, going back to just feedback, what are your ideas, your concerns, your solutions. We do have a lot going on in the basin. We started, I'll mention, this is our third meeting. We started back in October of 2018 with the stakeholder workshop, and so we met with a lot of the local levee districts and the parishes, and really kind of went through what's out there, what information do we have, and we pulled a lot of that information into this study. So that was a great start. We did have public meetings in the January timeframe, and this meeting really continues that conversation, and we'll keep doing these meetings as often as needed. So again, I guess I'm talking a lot all of a sudden, but really what we're here to do is to let you talk to us and tell us what we need to know. Again, what are your biggest concerns, your biggest issues, and what are some solutions that you think we need to bring to the table? Let's see if I can get this going. Ooh. What do I need to point at? Thank you. So I mentioned the other meetings that we've had. This is a specific type of meeting, and I just want to take a minute to let you know what that is. So this is a NEPA scoping meeting. It's the National Environmental Policy Act, and it's required on every federal action. And the point of NEPA is really to ensure that the federal government considers environmental factors along with all of the other factors we consider, and costs and benefits are the ones that most of y'all are probably familiar with. But scoping is a really important fundamental step of the NEPA process. And so in looking at some of the alternatives that we're considering and some that y'all might bring to the table, you can imagine that some of them might have some significant impacts to the environment. So we are anticipating doing an environmental impact statement. And scoping is that early opportunity in the EIS process to get public comment and feedback. And so that's really why we're here tonight. We did publish a notice of intent earlier this month, actually last month now, May 1st. And so typically the Corps will put out a notice of intent and have, say, a 45-day scoping period for comments from the public. And what we're doing for this study and all the supplemental studies is maintaining an open communication and an open comment period. So we certainly encourage comments now. We hope that you'll stay tonight and chat with us at the boards and give us that feedback now. But we will be accepting comments throughout this process, so please continue to reach out to us. We'll have contact information in the presentation. It's on the fact sheets. And really to reinforce what Renee had said earlier about the comment cards, I mean, those are critical. We're going to speak with you tonight, and we're going to go back to our offices, and we're going to try to document everything that we heard, but having it in your words and your perspective is really critical. So they're postage paid. Take them home if you don't have time tonight. Do them over the weekend. Hand them to your neighbors. And we're really just trying to get that feedback rolling into the core. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, so this is a quick summary slide on some of the fundamental kind of mechanisms that we're using to work this study. So there's two things that the Corps needs from Congress to initiate a study. And the first one is authorization. And that's essentially permission to do the study. So we received authorization for this study back in the 90s, and we've used this authority in the past. So what we're doing this time around is really trying to take a holistic approach. We're re-looking at the studies that have been done to date, the information that's out there, and trying to pull this together in a watershed level to come up with some recommendations that are going to work for the communities out here. The second thing that the Corps needs to pursue a study is appropriations, and that's the money side. So you can see in the blue box there in the center of the screen, it was the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2018. That was the supplemental bill following the Great Flood of 2016 in the Baton Rouge in this area, and the hurricanes that swept through the coast and Puerto Rico that provided that funding. So really important, we did receive all of our money up front from Congress, so that's going to allow us to build and maintain that momentum on the study process. Typically the Corps will get funding year by year, incrementally, and we try to keep things moving forward, but this is really a huge opportunity for us to knock this thing out and have a product within 3 years. So the 3x3x3 study, back in 2012, the Corps modernized its planning process, and we now complete all feasibility studies within a 3-year time frame, and also within $3 million, which we have in hand. The last 3 is for 3 levels of vertical team integration, and what that really refers to is the folks that you can work with and talk to in the New Orleans district are working hand in hand with the folks at our division office in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and our headquarters folks up in Washington, D.C. So we have quarterly IPRs, we meet with them regularly. We actually had a meeting with them last week on this project. So that's really going to ensure that we have senior leadership buy-in at every step of this process, and everyone knows what we're doing and there are no surprises. So that coordination is key to getting this thing done on time and on budget. The other thing that 3x3 always brings to my mind is that it's really critical that we get the input from you tonight and that we get the information that all the locals have for the project. It's challenging to get these large watershed level studies done in 3 years and with the constrained funding. So it's really, really important to pull together all the existing information that's out there, and there is a lot in this basin, so we appreciate that. I think I mentioned up above that this is 100% fully federally funded. So again, we're making strides right now, we're moving forward, and we're going to have a product in 3 years. Thank you. So coordination, I think I've hit this a few times now, but coordination is so key on these studies. CPRA is our non-federal sponsor, and they have been really instrumental in bringing forth information. They've got the state master plan alternative that has fleshed a lot of this out as far as design and cost estimates. And the locals have provided a ton of information too within the basin. We've got survey data, geotech data, we've got bathymetry data, GIS shape files, we've got the alignments. So this information is really pouring in, which is going to help us so much. So we've really been trying to engage early and often, and we will continue to collaborate with everyone as much as we can throughout the study process. We do have the government stakeholders, the federal and state natural resource agencies, the tribes, and again, all the locals. So really the point of this study is that we can't get to the end without y'all. This coordination that we're doing now, that we started back in October and that we're going to continue doing, is really going to allow us to be successful. And so we're really asking for your help here tonight. Again, please take the time after the presentation to stick around and come and chat with us and give us your feedback on these alternatives, on other alternatives that maybe need to be on the table, and help us get to a solution that's going to work for the communities and the people that live here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Bolin, plan formulator on the project.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Dr. Matthew Bolin. I'm the plan formulator on the feasibility study. At this time in the study, we want to give you an update of where we're at, and we also want to give you an idea of where we're at in the study. And we're looking for input from the public on any alternatives that you may have. We'll jump right into the study area. The study area is bound by the Mississippi River on the north, Bayou Lafourche on the south, and it extends all the way from Donaldsonville all the way to just past U.S. Highway 90. U.S. Highway 90 is a critical evacuation route for the basin, saying that there's only 3 ways water can exit this basin. There's the main one down Bayou Lafourche. There's one north and one south. Anytime there's any congestion, any type of backwater issues, we get issues with flooding in the area. Just to give you an idea of the topography of the area, most of the houses exist on ridges in the basin, and all the water tends to drain towards Lake Des Allemands. There's about 25,000 structures that exist in the basin or in the whole study area. 10% of those are commercial and 90% of those are residential. And we'll get into more of the problems and opportunities here in just a minute in the next slide. But we wanted to take into account that we're looking for public input. We're looking for that information. We're coming to the public, coming to you for that information. The area, like I was saying, U.S. Highway 90 is a critical evacuation route, and it's kind of a separation point in the basin. We have coastal storm damage coming up from the Gulf that backs up water coming out of Lake Des Allemands, and that basically exacerbates the issue. So the lower portion of the basin tends to suffer damage from coastal storm damage. The upper portion of the basin tends to have a lot of issues with rainfall, and the rainfall and storm surge coming together, whether it's a tidal event or coastal storm surge, we end up having backwater backing up into the basin, exacerbating the flooding and damages in the basin. Hold on just a second. Back up one slide. That's all right. I wanted to touch base on critical infrastructure again, U.S. Highway 90. We want to make sure that it's open before, during, and after an event. That's critical to allow the area to recover after an event. Other critical facilities are government facilities, schools, and medical facilities. They all aid in the rehabilitation of the area upon an event. All right, next slide. This is a no-action alternative. No-action alternative means what we're going to see in the future without an alternative, which brings us to the future without project condition. We compare all of our alternatives to the future without project condition, and this is a forecast of what's going to happen in the basin in the future. Any future construction that we foresee, any issues with sea level rise, some subsidence in the area. One construction project in the basin that's occurring right now is the St. Charles Parish Levee, and it comes down into the basin about halfway. It is considered in the future without project condition right now in the study. Increased storm damages, we tend to see more and more like Sarah said, since 2016, we've been seeing an increase in frequency and intensity of these storms. Is this something we need to really look into in the study area? All right, next slide. Coming into this, we have a few alternatives. We're looking for a lot of input. This is just to help stir ideas. We have 7 alternatives right now that we're looking into, and these aren't set in stone or anything by any means. 6 structural alternatives, which are levees or T-walls, and then we have one that is a non-structural alternative. And the non-structural alternative can be moving houses, raising houses, for example. And I'll go through a little bit more detail of these alternatives in the coming slides. One of our alternatives, our first alternative, you can see the brown line in the first alternative. That is the existing St. Charles levee alignment that exists in the basin currently, and it's considered in the future without project condition. It is built to the 7.5 foot height, and with this alternative, we foresee maybe a levee going across the basin, and this levee alignment would include pumps, and it would really prevent a lot of damage from storm surge. The difference between alternative 1 and 2 is alternative 2, we're looking at a height above the 7.5 foot elevation, and the real difference between these is cost. Next slide, please. Alternative 3 is known as the Des Allemands Parodies Levee. This levee continues from the existing St. Charles Parish levee that's on the ground currently, and it would extend out at the 7.5 foot or below elevation. Next slide. These two alternatives would leave the basin open, and we're optimizing the capacitance within the basin. The basin can have a lot of storage. We wanted to include Raceland at the lower edge. We weren't sure if there was a lot of damages in the study area, so we definitely want to investigate that. We wanted to make it another alternative. The base edge levee system is really depending on the capacitance in the basin. It's leaving the basin open to let the water during a surge come into the basin. But again, it will have pump systems, possibly. Everything, again, still isn't set in stone, but we're looking at these alternatives just for ideas, just to stir more ideas from the public. And next slide, please. We want to include the coastal CPRA master plan. This master plan is designed to a 100-year level of risk reduction. It's a little bit different than our other alternatives. We include in this alternative the West Bank vicinity raising. It's the northeast side of the levee system. And alternative 7. All these alternatives, just for an idea, we can have a combination of non-structural and structural alternatives at the end of this. So there's nothing really set in stone that we can't have a combination, parts and pieces, just whatever gives us the best benefits. When we're looking at the non-structural alternatives, whether it's raising, moving houses, we're looking into hot spots in the area that see a lot of damage, and we're also going to look across the whole basin for these damages. And as of that, I'm going to hand it over to Everard, our environmental.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Everard Baker. I'm a biologist with the planning office. My role is to help Matt and Sarah figure out what are the environmental impacts associated with the project and how can we go about getting this done with the least amount of impact. So these are some of the resources that we are looking at right now. I work with archaeologists. I work with our geologists on oil and gas issues. Several different resources to consider. What is it that we're looking at when we talk about the 800,000 acres within this basin? So you can see a good list of them here. We also get into the human environment, where we look at the socioeconomics, we look at recreational issues like commercial and recreational fishing, and noise issues, because obviously that's going to have an impact on wildlife in the basin. Next slide, please. So this is essentially what we do with NEPA. We're going to go ahead and look at threatened and endangered species. I've been coordinating with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the National Marine Fisheries Service. They've come up with a couple different things. The main issues that Fish and Wildlife Service wants us looking at are the West Indian manatee and the pallid sturgeon. West Indian manatees are not normally seen in Louisiana, but we do see them occasionally, so we have to include them in our analysis. The pallid sturgeon they brought up specifically because they're concerned that we could be dredging from the Mississippi River and using that for our levees. I've explained to them that as of right now, we don't have a borrow source in the river. And if that changes, then we'll coordinate with them and address that. But the pallid sturgeon is specifically in the river. We won't see it in the basin, generally speaking, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. The National Marine Fisheries Service has told me that for essential fish habitat, we're looking at red drum, brown, and white shrimp. This is a depressional wetland, so it doesn't have a lot of exchange between Lake des Allemands and the Gulf. But these marshes that are located within the basin play a really important role in the life cycle of brown and white shrimp. Usually in their juvenile years, they spend time up there. And I'm sure if you're a fisherman or anything like that, you like to spend a lot of time up in the basin. So we also have cultural and historic resources that are an issue out there, specifically around des Allemands. We're looking at potential for sites. And as we move forward, we'll determine whether a cultural survey is necessary once we determine the final alignment of everything. Addressed recreational use in the basin. Water quality is always an issue, particularly if we end up putting a gate across. We want to make sure that we are not disturbing the exchange between the upper and lower basin. Next slide, please. So this just summarizes the scoping report. I really encourage you, if you're a member of the public or anybody that's interested in this project, please let me know if you have an environmental concern. Make sure you leave your name, number, and clearly identify what your concerns are on one of the comment cards by the front desk. And we will be addressing that in the scoping report. The report's used to focus the EIS study on the issues that are important to you as members of the public. And I want to make sure that you all feel like your issues are identified and addressed. That will end up being posted on the project website. And if you have any issues finding that, please let me know. I am more than happy to get it to you. I think that's it for me.
Okay, I've got the last couple slides. This is a snapshot of our 3-year time frame that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. So these are just some important checkpoints that we have with our division of headquarters offices and important checkpoints that we have with the public as well. So we did execute the feasibility cost sharing agreement with CPRA back in October of 2018, and we did hold an alternatives milestone with our division of headquarters offices. As I mentioned earlier, we are meeting quarterly with MVD and headquarters to make sure they know what we're doing. We'll brief them out on these meetings that we're having this week, let them know the comments that we're hearing, and just keep them plugged in throughout this study. We anticipate having a tentatively selected plan this fall. And what that means, that's really the district's recommendation. It's a plan the district believes the Corps may recommend at the end of the study. And so we will have that plan in the fall of 2019, and then in the winter time frame, we'll release that plan publicly through the feasibility report and the draft EIS that Everard spoke about. And so that's really your next big check-in point, is to access that document. We'll put everything online, all the appendices, you can see all the technical information, and that's your big opportunity to comment on what you think about that tentatively selected plan. Once we get those comments back, we'll incorporate that into our report and make revisions as needed. And after that, we're going to go to our agency decision milestone. That is a major checkpoint with our division and headquarters offices to make sure all of Corps senior leadership is on board with that plan. Once they give us their buy-in, we then spend the next approximately year going into feasibility level design. And so at that point, we're kind of refining the information that we have, the H&H models, the alignments for the design, the cost estimates, and making sure that we have a really solid plan that can go up to Congress. And then in the fall of 2021, that's the end of our 3-year time frame, and at that point we have a chief's report that can be submitted to Congress for authorization and appropriations for a potential construction project. So again, these are timelines y'all can track, check in with us, and again, the critical public involvement periods coming up this fall and winter. So scoping questions, really that concludes the formal part of the presentation. We're about to open up back into the open house segment of the meeting, and we're certainly welcoming any and all comments, but what we're really hoping to bring back from this meeting are 2 things. One, what are those issues and major concerns that y'all have? What do we need to know when we walk away from this meeting tonight and go back and work on with our team? And then 2, are there some other alternatives that we should be looking at? Are there ways that we could modify the alternatives that Matt went through with you? Just getting feedback on kind of what we've been brainstorming and seeing if you think it's going to meet your needs and what things we might be missing. And the last slide is going to be the contact information. We do have a project website. It's on the fact sheet too. If you want to grab one of those on your way out, you'll have a way to get a hold of us. I've got business cards. Every day in this 3-year process is the day that you can contact me to see what's going on in the study. And again, just another shout out to these comment cards. We had public meetings last week on a different study, and we had hours of really great conversations with people, but there is no substitute for having your words and your perspective in writing for us to go back to. So please take the time to fill those out. And with that, I think I'll turn it back over to Renee to push us into the open house segment of the meeting.